It is simply wonderful to have you all here today.
We wouldn't miss it for the world, Dad.
Margit Sorensen and her husband, Soren, had been married for 9 years. From the outside, their life together appeared built on absolute trust, particularly within the dynamics of Soren's extended family. Margit was fully integrated into the family. Soren's parents, Carl and Ingrid, lived 40 minutes away, and weekend visits were the standard. Margit had also developed a genuine, independent friendship with Soren's sister, Freya, considering her a confidant rather than just a relative by marriage. This dynamic created a closed-loop trust system. In this state, the deep familial integration prevents the brain from even considering the possibility of group-wide deception. When the people you trust most are the ones providing the information, you stop scanning for threats. This integration acted as a protective layer for Soren's double life. Because Margit's reality was constantly reinforced by 3 other people, she had no reason to look for flaws in the design of her daily life. 5 years into the hidden affair, a tiny anomaly appeared. It happened during a routine Sunday dinner at Carl and Ingrid's house. The atmosphere was completely ordinary and relaxed. Over dinner, Ingrid casually mentioned running into a woman named Helene at the pharmacy, asking Soren if he had sorted out that thing with her yet. Soren replied smoothly, attributing it to a work logistics issue. Margit had no idea who Helene was, but because the family's demeanor remained calm and unified, her brain categorized the mention as a mundane detail. No one flinched, and the conversation moved on naturally. This interaction shows how a secret survives within a group. When an entire table of people treats a piece of information as a mundane fact, the outlier is absorbed into the background noise of the environment. 18 months ago, that environment changed. Soren's father, Carl, suffered a serious cardiac event. For several days, the entire family stayed in a fluorescent-lit hospital waiting room, running on high stress and almost zero sleep. This environment triggered systemic cognitive fatigue. Maintaining a coordinated lie requires a constant allocation of mental energy. When an external emergency forces a group to redirect all their focus towards survival, the energy required to maintain a complex deception is depleted. During an overnight stretch, Freya made a slip. While discussing the family's stress, she wondered aloud how Soren managed to juggle both of you for this long without something falling apart. When Margit pressed for clarity, Freya went pale and immediately retreated. The coordination required to sustain the secret for 5 years depended on a stable environment. Once that stability was replaced by the pressure of a medical crisis, the human network maintaining the lie reached its breaking point. Following the hospital incident, Margit's psychological state changed. She began a deliberate audit of her past, scanning for the small inconsistencies she had previously ignored. She pinpointed a work conference 8 months prior, but financial records didn't match the claimed city. They traced 2 hours away, where Helene lived. Moving back to a guy's weekend, a friend's forgetfulness mapped against the data, connecting nodes and revealing deliberate cover. These were no longer isolated incidents. Margit was looking at a clear mathematical pattern of deception. The discovery of the affair was one betrayal. The discovery of the logistics revealed a coordinated 6-year operation involving his entire family. 6 weeks after the hospital incident, Margit confronted Freya. She didn't ask for a confession about the affair. The data already proved it. She demanded to know the full extent of the family's involvement. Freya admitted the structure. Soren and Helene were supported by Carl, Ingrid, and Freya, who knew for 6 years. They provided active cover. On 2 occasions, Carl and Ingrid gave false alibis when Margit called looking for Soren. The coordination extended to extended family gatherings. Helene had been present at several events Margit didn't attend, introduced as a work friend, to ensure the secret remained contained within the immediate circle. Soren's family members were not passive bystanders. They were the active, load-bearing pillars that maintained the architecture of Margit's false reality. Every holiday dinner and Sunday visit shifted from a warm memory to a piece of evidence. The people Margit had trusted were operating from a script she was never meant to see. This realization upended her history. The foundational trust in her marriage and her extended family was gone. Faced with the collapse of her reality, Margaret moved away from emotional grief. She began building a documented record of exactly who in the family knew about the affair and for how long. When a shared reality is systematically dismantled, emotion provides no protection. Survival requires stepping back, analyzing facts, and becoming the meticulous architect of your truth. When handed a truth that breaks your reality, the immediate instinct is to react. Margaret did the opposite. She cleared away the emotion and replaced it with a demand for absolute, undeniable proof before she took a single step. For an entire month, she went into lockdown. She pulled 9 years of credit card statements, old text messages, and calendar entries, cross-referencing every unexplained late night and work event against the 6-year timeline her sister-in-law, Freya, had exposed. This diagram maps the audit. Applying a rigid framework, Margaret identified 11 anomalies where Soren's claimed locations contradicted his actual spending. Zooming in reveals the most damaging internal evidence. On 3 nights, she found his parents' home number in her call log, exposing rehearsed cover stories. For years, she had lived with a vague, lingering unease. Applying a clinical framework to these records pinned that unease to a set of verifiable dates and times. Margaret still had one data gap to fill. She ran a basic search and sent a short, factual message to the woman at the center of the deception, Helene. Margaret wasn't looking for a confrontation. She was completing the dataset. Helene responded to her within a day. During a 2-hour phone call, she provided unprompted details that locked into Margaret's timeline. Soren had told Helene from the start that his marriage was essentially over and that he and Margaret were simply sorting out the logistics of separating. Both women realized they had been categorized as assets to be managed. Soren had used the same set of scripts to keep them in separate, controlled lanes for 6 years. This structural node network illustrates the deception. Soren sits in the center, keeping Margaret and Helene in isolated silos. Helene confirmed that Soren's parents, Carl and Ingrid, acted as the barrier. They had met Helene multiple times, telling her they just wanted Soren to be happy, while continuing to present the marriage as intact to Margaret. Acquiring corroborated truth from multiple perspectives shifts the victim out of isolation and provides the leverage needed to dismantle the system. Having built an airtight case, Margaret prepared to act. She understood that the sequence of the confrontation mattered as much as the evidence itself. She chose to confront the accomplices first. Margaret went to Carl and Ingrid alone, specifically choosing a time when Soren was not present to ensure he couldn't influence their reaction. She laid out the specific dates, the cover stories, and the phone logs. She watched 2 people she'd been close to for 9 years retreat into a defensive silence before they tried to claim they had simply stayed out of it. This network map shows the immediate effect of that meeting. By presenting documented proof of their active cover-ups, Margaret dissolved their excuse. The support cluster vanished, leaving Soren's position entirely exposed. Neutralizing the support network first stripped Soren of his ability to call for reinforcements or shape the narrative before Margaret reached him. Margaret saved the primary target for last. She confronted Soren only after every other family member and witness had already seen the evidence. She presented the full arsenal: Helene's testimony, the 6-year timeline, his family's participation, and the specific logistics lies he had told for years. Soren sat through the presentation without the shifting explanations or dramatic defensiveness often seen in these moments. The volume of independently corroborated detail from multiple sources left no room for the story to be reshaped. Instead of a clever minimization, Soren was met with the reality of his own records and the statements of everyone he had used to maintain them. He chose silence, sitting at the end of the table as the architecture of his 6-year performance finished collapsing. A deeply entrenched deception cannot survive when all its escape routes are simultaneously closed by documented reality. The confrontation was over, but the procedural work continued. Margaret filed for divorce within 30 days. During the proceedings, her attorney focused on the dissipation of marital assets. This is the legal accounting of using joint funds to finance a hidden life. This bar chart represents the marital assets. Because Margaret had documented every trip and gift connected to Helene, her attorney could extract that value from the settlement. That highlighted segment was transferred back to Margaret's side of the ledger. She did not walk away empty-handed. She secured a settlement that accounted financially for exactly what 6 years of a hidden parallel life had cost the marriage. The act of rigorous data collection served a material purpose. It became the mechanism for reclaiming her financial standing. The family structure Margaret knew has been dismantled. She hasn't spoken to Carl or Ingrid since the day of the confrontation, and the performed normalcy of their holiday dinners is over. She maintains a careful connection with Freya. Their relationship is now defined by those 6 years of complicity, regardless of Freya's genuine regret for the silence she maintained. It is striking how long this structure held together. It might have survived indefinitely if Freya hadn't been exhausted enough during a single hospital shift to let one true sentence slip past the family discipline. Deception of this scale relies on its targets remaining isolated and uninformed. By methodically closing the loops and following the paper trail, Margaret dismantled the system and reclaimed her own narrative.